Happy Tuesday and welcome to another episode of Hornets Daily, your one-stop shop for all things Charlotte Hornets. As always, we're presented by the good people over at FanArc, and I'm your host, Vance Ballard, but you already know you can call me VB. I want to thank everybody out there for joining us today, watching along with us. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button, leave a like and a comment down in the comments section. Really enjoy seeing what you guys think about what's going on the show and get to interact down in the chat with you guys a little bit as we continue to grow and build this Hornets Daily family here on the program. As usual, it is a slow point in September. Not a whole lot going on in the NBA right now, but we do have a couple things on the docket for the show today. We're going to start talking a little bit more about training camp as it continues to get closer and closer. Specifically today, how important is this training camp session going to be for Tidjane Salaun? We'll talk a little bit about that on the program today. We've got some wild takes coming out at this point of the year. We know that it is a slow point and it is time to get those takes off. There is a wild one floating around about Charles Lee, and I'll explain a little bit about that today as well. Wouldn't be a Hornets Daily episode if we didn't talk about LaMelo Ball. We all know that. What's going to be the most important thing for him to develop and get better at this year, his passing or his defense? We'll discuss which one of those I think is going to be more important for LaMelo to improve on in terms of making the Hornets more successful as well. And we're going to wrap the program up today with a little discussion about Liam McNeely and what can be his long-term role here with the Charlotte Hornets. We'll discuss all of those things today. Like I say, just a slower period, but we still have some stuff going on down in the Queen City, and on Hornets Daily, we bring it all to you right here. We also don't beat around the bush, like to dive headfirst into the program, and that's exactly what we're going to do today. As I mentioned, as training camp gets closer, preseason is creeping up. We're going to talk a little bit more about training camp and what to expect, what we should be looking for some of the Hornets. Today we're going to start with Tidjane Salaun. How important is this camp going to be for the former number 6 overall pick, who we have talked a lot about this summer? It has been a little bit since we've discussed him, but he has been a heavily mentioned name here on the program. We also know that when he was drafted at the number 6 overall pick last year, it was more of a project, a long-term development draft pick. We know he has a very high ceiling, a lot of athleticism and raw talent, but he's still developing as a basketball player as a whole, still got a lot of things to work on. But it has appeared, what we've seen so far this summer, he has been doing that work. He has been putting in the work, in the hours, in the gym. He has appeared to be improving in most of the facets of his game from what we've seen so far, especially on the offensive end. We know that's where Tidjane struggled a little bit last year. He only averaged 5.9 points a game. Going to need to see an uptick in that, as well as his rebounding, which he has gotten better at and started to be a little stronger inside this summer, it seems, as well. Out in Las Vegas during the Summer League, as we know, he looked like a number 6 overall pick, averaging a double-double in the 2 games that he played out there, scoring the ball very well as crashing the glass and playing defense. He also seemed to be a little more confident shooting the basketball from outside the paint, taking jump shots. Much like we've talked about Musa, he too is adding a little turnaround jump shot to his game. So if he can continue to deepen his offensive bag, that's going to be big for Salaun going forwards. Now, on the defensive end of the floor, there's not too many questions. I think he's going to be just fine there. His frame, his body size, and he's long, so he can play on the defensive end of the ball. I don't think that's going to be much of an issue for him. It's going to be all about his offensive development that keeps him growing and becoming a better player, like we hope he will. Despite all of that being said, all of the compliments, all of the improvements that Salaun has been making, at all of the strides that we've seen him take this summer, this is still a crucial training camp for the young Frenchman. It's still a little bit unclear exactly what his role with the Hornets is going to be, especially this year going forward. But I think that with a good camp showing, he can fix that problem. He can kind of give us a better understanding of what is to be expected, what is going to be his role this season. I think Charlotte is probably going to need around 20 17 to 20 solid minutes, productive minutes out of Tidjane Salaun per night if they want to get where they're trying to go. If they want this season to go according to plan, he'll have to play a big role. He'll have to get some good quality productive minutes and come in and off the bench and fill in for some of those starters. And he's going to have to spend the majority of his time at the 4 when he comes off the bench, whether that be for Miles Bridges or if for some reason Musa's playing the 4 at the time and he comes in and has to swap there. Tidjane may even see some time at the 5 when he comes off the bench just because of the lack of depth that the Hornets have at that position right now, something we've discussed ad nauseum here, so we're all well aware of the center situation in Charlotte. Again, him spending his time at the 4 is going to be a little bit interesting. He's going to have to adjust to being undersized sometimes, but use his length and his strength and his overall athleticism to get an advantage on both ends of the floor at the power forward position, to be honest. But if he can develop an offensive game, if he can get those guys to move out, clear some space for LaMelo, for Brandon Miller to drive, Colin Sexton, guys like that, then he'll be even more important when he is on the floor. But I do think his offensive game is going to take great strides, and he's going to have a big year coming up. If he does not have a good camp, though, it could very easily lead to him being buried down in the depth chart and things starting to slip away here, and it'll begin to look as if the Hornets wasted a number 6 overall pick, especially with the return of Grant Williams. If Salaun has not solidified himself solidified his place on the roster, solidified his role in the rotation by Christmas or a little after when Grant Williams gets back, that could muddy up the waters even more in terms of what he is going to mean to this team. Is he going to be useful to this team going forwards? But I don't think that's going to be an issue. Those are just scenarios, because I do genuinely believe that Tidjane's going to have a strong camp. I think he's going to have a good year this year. I honestly believe we're going to see big steps forwards from him, especially on that offensive end of the floor. He's going to be fine on defense. He won't necessarily hurt the team. I'm not saying he's going to be all first team all defense or anything like that, but he's going to be just fine on that end of the floor, much more than competent on the defensive side of the ball. But I think he's going to take those big strides offensively, which will help not only him but the Hornets improve and get to where they're trying to go in terms of becoming a play-in team or a real playoff contender going forwards. If he does lay an egg in training camp, however, he may never get the chance to prove to us that he will be as good as we think he could, that promise and that athleticism that he was drafted for are going to pay off. If he has a bad camp and he gets buried in that depth chart, I fear he may never get the chance to show that off here in Charlotte. So it again is going to be vital for him to have a strong showing in training camp and establish his position in the rotation, establish his place on this Hornets roster, not just this year, but going forwards as well. Now, I know we've talked about it this time of year, all kinds of things, all kinds of takes get thrown around. Everyone's getting their thoughts and opinions off, trying to get you to click this button. And, well, yesterday I found something that got me to click that button. I've come across what I think is a crazy take about Charles Lee and his status with the Hornets as well. Aurel DeZone over at Swarm and Sting thinks that Charles Lee could be approaching the hot seat. Now, that is what I think is a bit out there. I think that's a bit wild to say. I don't think that there's any reason for Charles Lee to be approaching the hot seat. Realistically, no matter what happens this season, I don't think there's even going to be a little bit of warmth underneath Charles Lee's seat. I think he's very safe, very comfortable in his job, and the Hornets have made the right decision for who is going to lead them into the future. Now, DAZN bases all of this on a survey that was put out by the BuzzBeat podcast, surveying fans about the upcoming season. One of the questions, of course, is how confident are you in Charles Lee? Last season, when this podcast was put out, fan confidence was through the roof. There was a lot of 100% confidence. There was a lot of 5 out of 5 confidence levels in Charles Lee. But it seems that this year things have declined a little bit in that survey. And it's not that people are down on Charles Lee by any means. The overall reaction is still much more positive than negative when it comes to Charles Lee and the future. but it has started to decline based on last year's numbers and Charles Lee's first year manning the bench for the Hornets. DAZN also seems to think that things could get a little hairy for Charles Lee if he is unable to produce better results than last year. If the Hornets don't seem to be taking strides forward, if they do come up around that same 19, 20, 21 win year, I think that's what DAZN is saying. Things could get a little bit hairy, could get a little bit uncomfortable for Charles Lee. That seat could start to warm up, especially based on the new improved roster and the new guy and the talent that has now been put in front of Charles Lee to try and coach this team. It has gotten better, so off the floor has gotten better on paper, so it needs to get better on the floor, and results need to come as well. Now, it's not all bad from DAZN. He does end the article by saying that fans could be calling for a replacement, but he thinks that would potentially be a negative move for a team like Charlotte, who is trying to rebuild around a young defensive-minded coach like Charles Lee. So again, I'm saying not bad things about Aurel DAZN. It seems like he doesn't necessarily think that Charles Lee is on the hot seat, but if he does think that, then that's a wild take for sure, because I don't feel like Charles Lee is anywhere close to being on the hot seat or his seat even warming up underneath him at all. I think he is very safe in his job. Again, he's got the backing of the front office. We know Jeff Peterson and him are basically in lockstep with their goals for this Hornets team, and I think the results are going to start to show that. Charles Lee is a very good coach. He's a very good developer. Again, he's a strong defensive mind. So I think that all of those things are going to start to come together here in year two. And if an unsuccessful year or things don't go right, and after even just the second year, we're putting Charles Lee on the hot seat, I too think that would be a mistake. I think that's a little egregious for the Hornets to do if that was something they're going to do. Again, I don't think that's going to be the problem. I think the Hornets will be much improved and we'll have nothing to worry about when it comes to this. But I did see this wild take when I was out looking around yesterday and wanted to share it with you guys just because I think it's kind of crazy, and Charles Lee is going to be the Hornets coach at least for the foreseeable future. Now, as I say, on a lot of these shows here, it would not be a Hornets Daily episode if we did not discuss LaMelo Ball, so that's exactly what we're going to do here today. Got to keep the theme going. One of the what we're going to talk about with LaMelo today is areas he needs to improve. We know he struggles with his scoring efficiency. We know sometimes the turnover bug gets to biting. We know he takes those crazy shots, one-legged running three-point shots from 29 feet away. He'll fall out of bounds and shoot. When we know all of his tendencies, and we know the things that he struggles with. We also know he is a less than average defender here in the NBA. So what is going to be the most important trait for him to improve on? I've narrowed it down to what I think are the two most important areas for LaMelo to take steps forward, and those are scoring efficiency and, of course, defense. Obviously, health is the biggest thing he's got to have go in his favor here, but we're not going to discuss that just because it's a given. That's something we all understand, that LaMelo has got to work on staying healthy. I know that sometimes it's not all his fault, but he's got to be on the floor for the Hornets to succeed. So again, the two things that we're talking about LaMelo improving on are his scoring inefficiency and his defense. Now, of course, which one of those is more important? That is an opinionated question, could be left up to determination, but in my opinion, I tend to lean towards his scoring efficiency being more important than him getting worlds and leaps and bounds better on defense. Now, he's not great on defense by any means. He looks bad sometimes. There's no denying that, and having the issues with his ankles and things like that don't help that at all. But there have been enough guys added around him, and just simply being in Charles Lee's system for an extra year will give you an advantage defensively. He knows how to put guys in the right spots on that end of the floor to get the most out of them that he can. So I don't think, I could be wrong. We could be sitting here in 2 or 3 months going, whew, he is terrible at defense, and that's got to change. But right now, I don't think that's the case. I think he's going to take small strides forward, and I think it's more important that he get better and become a more efficient offensive player, scorer of the basketball, passer of the basketball, all of the above. in theory, all he has to do to make this happen, to become a more efficient player, a more efficient scorer, is utilize the weapons that have been put around him. We've talked several times about this probably being the best roster that LaMelo has had around him since he's come into the NBA. And if he's going to be able to increase his efficiency numbers, his passing, lower his turnovers, get his assist rate higher, he's going to need to utilize those weapons around him. Now, again, the Hornets are no defensive juggernaut, but like I said, just being around Charles Lee, being in the locker room with him, you'd expect a small improvement, some strides forward on the defensive end. So again, I don't think that is a huge thing to worry about. It's going to be about LaMelo trusting the guys around him on offense, not jacking up 30 shots a game from 25, 26, 27, 28 feet while running off of one leg, not trying to play hero ball every time down the court. Now, when it's time to go be the man, LaMelo, that's fine. Go get it. But it is also going to open things up a little more if he's able to efficiently use the guys around him, shoot smarter shots, keep that shooting percentage at a higher number, shoot smart three-pointers that have a higher chance of going in and creating better opportunities for the guys around you because of how much focus you draw on the offensive end of the floor. I think it's going to be very important for LaMelo to improve and increase his scoring efficiency. We know he is an elite passer, one of the top 3, 4, 5 passing guards in the NBA. Now he's going to have to put those skills on display as he's going to have more opportunities to do so, and I do think it's going to greatly increase his scoring percentage, his efficiency numbers, and I think he's going to improve very much on that end of the floor, all while taking steps on the defensive end. I just don't think it's as crucial right now for him to become an all-world defender or an immediate ball stopper. I don't know that is exactly what the Hornets need from LaMelo right now. They're going to be all right on the defensive end of the floor. They're going to be able to do what they need to do on that end of the floor without LaMelo becoming Tony Allen, Lance Stevenson, something like that. It's going to be more important for him to control the ball wisely, keep the offense in front of him, and run it like a true point guard now that he has the guys to do that with. One of those guys he may be able to do that with at some point, whether it be this year, in the long term, who knows, that's going to be Liam McNeely. Now, we know we can assume the trajectory of one of the Hornets' first-round picks, Con Knippel. We know what we know roughly what his timeline with the Hornets is going to look like, where he's headed in terms of being a starter, being an important piece for a long time in this Charlotte franchise. But what about the future for Liam McNeely? That's the other first-round pick that things get a little more confusing about when it comes to talking about his role, how he fits, what's his niche in this rotation going to be. And I'm not necessarily talking about this year right now. Feels pretty clear that he's just going to come off the bench, try to get his feet underneath him in the NBA, shine where he can, put in minutes when asked, but I don't think he's going to play a massive or major role in this 25-26 Hornets team. But what does that mean for the 19-year-old's long-term here in Charlotte? 4, 5, 6, 7 years down the road, is he going to still be around? And if he is, what role is he going to be playing with this team? Can he become a starter? Can he become a staple piece at the small forward position? All of those are very intriguing questions, especially since what I just mentioned, he's a player best suited to play at the 3. We kind of know that spot's already been filled right now by Brandon Miller, especially if Con Knippel ends up getting the start at the shooting guard, then it will undoubtedly be Brandon Miller at the 3, which makes things a little more interesting in terms of McNeely starting or when he's going to get on the floor. He's going to be a backup to Brandon Miller for sure, at least for the early part of his career, first couple, 2-3 years while Brandon Miller is out here, is on the floor, and is on this roster. Then McNeely is going to have to come off the bench for him. And if that's the case, I don't think that's a bad thing at all, because I think Liam could pretty quickly, honestly, become one of the most valuable bench players off the league, or one of the most valuable bench players in the league. I think he's got all of the tools to be a set of fresh legs, come in with a high motor, grab some rebounds, score 8, 10, 12 points off the bench in a hurry, almost a microwave status, if you will. I think McNeely possesses all of those capabilities, and again, to quickly get himself into the category of one of the better one of the better bench players in the NBA, even sliding into the sixth man of the year conversations at some point. Again, don't want to say that is coming in his rookie year by any means, but that is where I think he can go if he does become that six-man role as opposed to being a starter here in the league. Now, it may not be his most preferred choice, of course, to be the sixth man to come off of the bench, but being a regular sixth man of the year candidate, if he can play at those kinds of high levels, may be the best case scenario for Charlotte as a franchise, as a team going forward. Let's think about this. If we're in 5 years from now and Charlotte is starting a prime superstar Brandon Miller, who's only going to be 27 years old, on top of a 24-year-old Liam McNeely coming off the bench, there's really no downturn in production. There's really no down. It's really almost going to be a lateral move going from one guy to the other when coming off the bench. The fresh legs of McNeely keep the train moving, keep the scoring going, and it continues to build for the Hornets. So again, if that is the case in 5 years and we're starting Brandon Miller and Liam McNeely's coming off the bench, I think the Hornets will be in a very good place, and that will probably mean they've taken all of the necessary steps to get themselves where they want to go and have become that contender in the Eastern Conference, or at the very least a regular in the playoff picture for the Eastern Conference. Now, of course, all of that is still to be determined. Liam McNeely could also become a long-term starter in this league if for some reason the Hornets decide to move on from Brandon Miller, or if something goes drastically wrong and Brandon Miller needs to start at the 2 next year after maybe moving on from Colin Sexton, Spencer Dinwiddie. Then we could see Liam McNeely pop into that starting small forward role, and things could go that way for him as well. If he does come into the starting lineup, I think he'll be just fine there as well. He'll be able to guard his position pretty well. He's getting better at defense. He impressed more than I thought he would on that end of the floor in Las Vegas, and he's a fantastic rebounder for his size and position. So those are things that he could bring to the table if he is going to work his way at some point into the starting lineup. And I'd also only imagine that by 2, 3, 4 years down the road, when it is a little more realistic for him to slide into that starting lineup, his jump shooting will only have increased. He'll be that much better of a shooter, that much better of a playmaker, and understand the game that much more, so his IQ will increase as well. There's so much promise for Liam McNeely. I am very, very excited about the prospect that he is and about the potential that he has, the things he can do for the Hornets here going forwards in his career. It's going to be something very exciting to watch, very exciting to continue to talk about and discuss. And you know that on Hornets Daily, if that is necessary, we'll bring you any news that we can. That's going to do it here for today's show, folks. As always, thanks so much for watching along with us, joining along out there. If you haven't already, smash that subscribe button. We're over 350, pushing over 360 on the march to 400 subscribers here on Hornets Daily. I want to thank everyone who's already subscribed. Remember, if you haven't, smash that button. Leave a like and a comment, and we'll see you right back here tomorrow with a brand new